Hello again, everyone. This is Joe Pasillo from the front line with Joe and Joe. Let us go into the breach. Um, I don't know. I'm just gonna start playing this video, and then we're just gonna comment on it because this is, as my 81-year-old Italian mother would say, this is the world that we live in. So let's just start playing this, and then we'll comment further.
My name is Amber Mum. I use she, her pronouns.
First things first. Nobody cares about your pronouns. Don't really care. Sorry. And I want to say something right away. I know this diatribe that this Amber goes on has to do with legislation in the Minnesota State House. I'm probably not going to comment too much on the legislation itself. I want to comment on the language that this guy uses because he will paint us as dangerous. Like what I just did by saying he will say is dangerous and violent, and I should go to jail for that. And my question to all of you out there is not to pick on this guy, because obviously this is a wounded, hurt, confused, lost individual who's deserving of our prayers and needs our help. Okay. But at the end of the day, he's not going to bully us. If you take 20 people that disagree with him and put them in a room, and then put him in a room with a gun that carries 20 bullets, 5 minutes later, there's going to be 20 dead people in that room, and he won't be one of them. This guy's dangerous, and that's what people need to realize. This has nothing to do with caring for people. This has nothing to do with the children. This has nothing to do with any of it. This has to do with hardcore Marxism, overturning reality. Good is evil, evil's good, light is dark, darkness is light, all of it. Let's continue.
I'm a member of the St. Cloud Hive of the Parents and Allies of Trans Youth, the Transgender Movement for Liberation, and a member of the Tea Time Support.
Every group we just mentioned, given that same opportunity, we're all dead. Let's just get it straight. When you hear liberation used by a leftist, that's a word you should really be aware of. That means that they're a hardcore Marxist movement is what they are, just like liberation theology in Central America and South America was something that the church condemned, but they used Marxism and combined it with Catholic teaching, or at least tried to. When you hear liberation, radical movements of the 1960s use the word liberation. They're dangerous revolutionaries is what they are. So is Mr. Hurd here.
Support group run by the Aliveness Project. I am also a proud transgender woman, but more importantly, I am the mother of two wonderful transgender and gender expansive children.
There's no such thing as transgender or gender expansive children. There's children that are boys and girls that people like you are trying to confuse because they're below the age of reason, and you are taking advantage of them to confuse them, which makes you, Amber, an evil person. You're an evil person when you try to tell a 5-year-old boy that he could be a girl, because you know he's not going to question you because he's 5. Just like the little girl would be 5. Okay. They're not going to question you because they're young, they're innocent, and they don't have the ability to reason, which makes you evil. Let's get it straight who the evil one is here. Amber.
Children. I drove down from St. Cloud to show my support for House File 147.
Did you drive down in a fossil fuel consuming vehicle? I'm just curious about that. Are you an environmentalist too, or was it a Tesla? Was it an electric vehicle? Just curious.
And thank Representative Finke for introducing such an important and life-saving bill to protect trans children and their families at such a critical time for us. As you may be aware,
it's a critical time, all right. It really is. The critical time is not for them. Remember something, they're the most protected group in society right now. There's nothing happening to them. And by the way, let's be clear. There's no violence being perpetrated against them. If there was, the Washington Post, the CNN, MSNBC, all of them, New York Times, would be all over it. If the hair on one single transgender kid, so-called transgender kid, was harmed, one hair on their head, okay, the left would be all over it in the media. You know it doesn't happen because the left is not reporting on that, because it doesn't happen. But you do know where the violence is coming from. A spa in San Francisco, okay, where a man deliberately pretended to be a woman so he could get naked and get in the hot tub with naked mothers and their daughters, because he's a pervert. He's not a transgender anything, okay? Or in Virginia, when a boy pretending to be a girl figured it'd be a good time to try to get into the girls' locker room because the law is on his side and he rapes a girl. That's where the violence is coming from. And CNN and MSNBC and the mainstream media, they won't report on that. And then when you go to the school board and you yell at them because they knew about it, and you're the father, and say you all knew about it, and you rightfully get angry with them and yell at them, the Merrick Garland and the Department of Justice says, you're the terrorist. Meantime, the guy's little girl got raped by a boy pretending to be a girl. So let's be clear, Amber. Let's be clear. You're the violent one. The critical time is for us to defend ourselves and to say no to people like you. Let's get this. Won't be too long-winded. Stick with me a little bit because this person, like I said, is dangerous.
There's a torrent of damaging, ill-informed, and outright malicious legislation being.
See, this is just like a ribeye that Amber is serving up. Let's talk about ill-informed. We are the most informed people on this topic. They are perpetrating lies. They get like-minded people, so-called doctors and scientists, people in the medical community, the psychological community, to try to come out and post papers that are affirming in some way of this disorder, because obviously Amber is a disordered human being. This guy is a disordered human being. Okay. Where the science, the psychology, it's not really a matter of sides, but anti-LGBT, this nonsense, let's call it transgenderism. Let's call it that, okay, is on the side of those who oppose it. The science, the psychology is on the side of those who oppose it. I am showing love towards a little child to unconfuse them because people like Amber and the politicians that support him support indoctrinating that little kid. Okay, theirs is the act of hatred because they would lie. And by the way, in some cases, many cases, irreparably damage that little kid because as that little kid gets older, then they have no problem shipping off to the butcher, especially in the case of little girls that are going to cut their breasts off when they're teenagers. Well, guess what? They don't grow back. Okay. We said on the show at the Frontline with Joe and Joe many times. Please follow us on social media, on YouTube, Frontline with Joe and Joe, and on Twitter, @WithJoe and Joe, @WithJoe and Joe. Follow us. We said many times, if you're a doctor and you don't counsel a young person coming into your office that wants a quote unquote transition, you don't counsel them properly to go get proper psychological evaluation, to rethink, to take some time. If you don't do that, and later on that person realizes that you did not do that, you need to be open to lawsuits. And guess what will happen? You're going to stop being so cavalier when it comes to butchering people's bodies.
Introduced across the country, targeting transgender and gender expansive people broadly, but trans children in particular. It is our daily experience to be forced to keep track of which state is safe for us to visit.
Every state is safe for you to visit. There's nobody harming you. And you should stop lying about good people who are opposed to you and your radical ideology, because that's what it is, but have no sights of harming you in any way. So you, Amber, are a liar. Because people like me, you'll call me a hater. I wouldn't harm a hair on your head. Not one. I feel sorry for you. I love you. I pray for you. I hope for your conversion. Okay. But you're unfair, you're unjust because nobody's harming you. No states are harming you. What states are doing is, number one, saying that people like me could say, because I have the right to in America, that I'm opposed to your ideology. And number two, children are going to be protected. You consider that to be violence. We consider that to be protection.
Minnesota has been overall very accepting and supportive of our family. But even then, we don't feel 100% safe and assured that we will be able to get the gender affirming care that both of my kids need and deserve. Very recently.
Your kids need your love, is what they need. They need you to look in the mirror and realize that you're a male of the species. That's what your kids need. The life that you're about to impose on them. Okay. I'd like to know, did you mention how old they are? You didn't do that. At least I didn't hear it in your little diatribe here in Minnesota. I didn't hear it, how old they are. That you're imposing this on them. You are imposing this on them rather than let them grow up. And if they're boys, be boys. And if they're girls, be girls. I don't know the sex of your children. But you're trying to impose your disorder on them. Okay? So we're telling them the truth. You are lying to them, Amber.
An amendment was proposed to House File 16 in Minnesota, which bans children's conversion therapy in an attempt to ban essential health care for transgender children.
Let's talk about conversion therapy. So now they're in favor of conversion therapy to convert heterosexual normal kids, okay, boys who think they're boys and girls who think they're girls, okay, they're in favor of converting those kids to so-called transgender. And they want that conversion therapy protected by the law. Yet, if many people who are out there who provide conversion therapy for those who are same-sex attracted, homosexuals and lesbians, who don't want that disorder anymore, who want to have a ordered view of sexuality, that of course is banned. So take a state like Minnesota. I'm sure, I don't know for sure, but I would bet my bottom dollar that Minnesota bans conversion therapy for those who voluntarily, who are same-sex attraction, who voluntarily want conversion therapy. That's banned, but to ban that same conversion therapy for little kids and let them alone and don't let them be indoctrinated by your psychologist, that of course is going to be allowed. Do you see the hypocrisy? You see, and by the way, in the case of homosexual and lesbian conversion therapy, these are adults. Those who are above the age of reason who say, I don't want this disorder anymore. I want therapy so that I, as a woman, let's say, or a man, I would be attracted to someone of the opposite sex. Okay. That is a voluntary thing. In this case, with this conversion therapy that this guy's talking about, you're imposing the conversion on the little child. Again, how evil.
This happened in our state. Because of this, my trans partner and I frequently discuss plans to flee the country if these targeted, hateful bills keep being introduced or passed.
You're not going anywhere, Amber. You're not going to any other country. Let's face it, for all your crying and bitching and moaning, which is what you do, Amber, okay? The bottom line is this. You are safe in the reddest of red states. Now, can you do whatever you want? Can you force a child to transition and the so-called transition and all this stuff? No, can't do that. But you're safe. That's not a matter of health or safety. Your so-called gender affirming care. Your gender affirming care is lying to little kids and confusing them. All right. That's your sin. All right. That's your sin. But if you're in Alabama or Mississippi, nobody's hurting you. Nobody's hurting you. Let's be clear. You're not going anywhere. You're not going to any other go to Russia. See how they treat you. I don't know if that's going to go over well. If your lifestyle is going to go over well in Russia. So why did you leave for a while? Go try some other countries. Believe me, you'll be begging to come back.
I never thought that it would come to this, but here we are. Even in a state that...
Let's talk about what we never thought would come to. That a man who thinks he's a woman could go into a spa in California and get in the hot tub with women. That up until 5 minutes ago, you'd have been arrested and thrown in jail. I never thought it would come to that. Okay? I never thought you could actually tell children and confuse children and tell boys they could be girls. I never thought it would come to that. But that's what it's come to. Everybody's out there focused on the debt ceiling. They're focused on what we're going to do and that's all important stuff. Don't get me wrong. This is the most dangerous stuff. Amber, by the way, is the new man. I'm going to end with this because this video is too long and I don't want to be too long-winded for all you good people out there listening at the front line with Joe and Joe. Amber is the new man. Amber is completely controllable because Amber is a slave to his so-called gender identity. That is the most important thing for him, is to have society recognize him. So those who would enslave Amber have convinced Amber that they are going to protect Amber by attacking people like me. In return, Amber will do everything that those people, call them oligarchs, call them New World Order, call them Illuminati, call them whatever you want. Let's call them the George Soros types, okay? The Klaus Schwab types, the Yuval Harari types. Amber is the new man. That is exactly what they want. Amber's the perfect slave. Amber will take a universal basic income. Amber will give them all the power that they want so that they can control industries in the name of so-called climate change, climate science. Amber is perfect for them because Amber is completely in and surrounded and self-enslaved by his so-called gender identity. And he doesn't realize it. That's why Amber needs our prayers. Amber absolutely needs our prayers. And those kids, like I said, up till 5 minutes ago, those kids would be taken away by the state. In the meantime, if I teach my child the truths of the Roman Catholic faith, believe me, people like Amber would want my kids taken out of my house. So let's be clear, and I'm going to leave you with this. Amber is no martyr. Amber is no misunderstood person. Amber is a dangerous revolutionary on one hand. Amber, everything that he complains about, he would impose on you. The violence that he claims is perpetrated on him, he would in a second impose on you. Let's be clear about that. And also, Amber is the new man. All right. The perfect slave of the oligarchs, the perfect slave of the New World Order. And we just have to, as we say at the show at the front line with Joe and Joe all the time, please follow us on YouTube and Twitter. As we say all the time, the answer to Amber and everyone like him is no. Is no. It's a very simple response.